Last week, CJ Haight from Global Spec joined me on this podcast to talk about our State of Marketing to Engineers research report and answer a lot of questions that we get about how the report is created and some in-depth questions we received during a recent live webinar. Well, on today's episode, I'm bringing in our collaborator, which was Udo Bormann from Elector, and we're going to discuss key differences between European respondents and North American respondents in key areas of the research, such as attitudes about AI, information sources, content preferences, trade shows, and more. We even touch on how to do localization in a streamlined manner, and if that's even possible or smart to do. So there's a lot to do with this episode. You'll also notice in the show notes, you can find links to the full research report, links to the webinar and the frequently asked questions, as well as how to reach out to Udo and Elector directly if you'd like to understand the European market more in depth. Let's do this.
Welcome to Content Marketing Engineered, your source for building trust and generating demand with technical content. Here is your host, Wendy Covey.
Hi, and welcome to Content Marketing Engineered. On each episode, I'll break down an industry trend, challenge, or best practice in reaching technical audiences. You'll meet colleagues, friends, and clients of mine who will stop by to share their stories. And I hope that you leave each episode feeling inspired and ready to take action. Before we jump in, I'd like to give a brief shout out to my agency, True Marketing. True is a full-service agency located in beautiful Austin, Texas, serving highly technical companies. For more information, visit truemarketing.com. And now, on with our podcast. Hey, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Content Marketing Engineered. I'm joined today by Udo Bormann. He is the Senior Marketing Manager at Elector Media. Welcome to the show, Udo.
Hi, Wendy. Looking forward to it.
Good. So today we're going to be unpacking the State of Marketing to Engineers report, the newest one from 2025. And Elector was kind enough to join Global Spec and True Marketing as a collaborator. And so I thought it would be fun to have you on the show and us talk about some regional differences between the results we saw from North America and from Europe. So how does that sound?
Sounds perfectly fine, Wendy. I think it was a great research document you guys put together. And I'm fascinated by the results. And there are a lot of similarities, but actually there are also many differences. And every marketer out there, I think, should know about it in order to adjust their campaigns and make engineers happy and bring the content towards their face that they need.
Yeah, great. Well, before we dive in, I would love to just have you talk a little bit about yourself, your career journey, perhaps, and what led you to work in your role at Elector.
Yeah, like you already mentioned, I'm Senior Marketing Manager at Elector. I've been with Elector now, I think, almost 10 years, so way too long. No, it's been an interesting, fascinating ride, and ever since Elector is to go towards Elector. Elector is an international media company, and we are reaching out to electronics engineers since the 60s, so we also have a strong history already. And everything evolved, of course, from back then having a print magazine into nowadays a global multimedia platform. So we have our online presence. We provide webinars, we provide e-papers, white papers, and all with the focus on electronics engineers. So we have a lot of good technical minds and editors who put their strengths together and create really in-depth publications. We provide online learning materials. And nowadays, we also, that's actually really fresh, we also acquired a B2B platform in Europe, which is called European Business Press. And with this medium platform, we can really focus also towards the B2B electronics markets. And I think our mission is clear. We want to bridge the gap between the innovation and the practical electronics application. That's what we aim for.
Great. And you're certainly a wonderful spokesperson for the company. You did the pitch very well. Like you have your messaging down about the company. That's great.
Yeah, some years of experience help to bring it together.
Absolutely. Well, tell me was Elector and you in particular interested in collaborating on this report?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I think Elector is really also European focused, and the whole state of the marketing for engineers report is focusing also on the global trends. So it's a great opportunity for us to compare, right? To see what are the strengths in Europe, what are the differences,
Yeah.
whether it's American sector or even the Asian markets, and this kind of understanding in the behavior of an engineer helps us to help our engineers again to really achieve their goals, to find relevant content. And in the end, it's important to know also the regional differences if you are such an international company. And I think for us, it's also bringing back to our own clients and in our own, yeah, we always call it electro family, to bring back some
Yeah.
knowledge
Yes.
that everyone can use. And that's why we're really happy that we collaborated and yeah, could provide a bit of help.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And that's why we started the research was to selfishly use it, have the insights to serve our clients better and to have better insights. And then, of course, it's wonderful that we can share this with our fellow marketers and just make all of us, the whole community, better. But I think we're both putting into practice that idea of how can we use these findings better. So good. Well, tell
Yeah.
me, just like starting big picture, did you find more differences between the regions or less differences than you expected?
I think overall, we have more similarities between engineers. So they're all data focused. No matter where you are, engineers really want details in depth. So I think the general behavior is pretty much the same. But
Yeah.
then when we digged into the data a bit deeper, for example, social media usage, AI trust level, I think AI was an interesting difference between the different markets. But also when you look into the events and the content preferences, you do see differences in those levels. And I think that's where the big advantage comes out of this report, right? Because you can really see in detail, hey, I'm based in the States and I really want to go towards Europe. Okay, here are the three, four, five channels I really have to focus on, which are different than in the States, but
Hmm.
that really makes a difference
Yeah.
for the marketeer to promote their product. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel the
And
same.
yeah, I think,
I felt there were more similarities perhaps than I expected. And I think part of that is perhaps a behavioral shift that happened during COVID, where everyone became more digitally focused in searching for
yeah,
information sources and maybe less reliant on sales visits, on trade shows, all the in-person things that we had to stop. And so anyone who was maybe lagging changed their behavior and it kind of put things a little bit on the same playing level, if you will. So just a theory,
yeah,
but certainly there were differences too. So I think it would be fun for us to
yeah,
just walk through some of the findings that you found interesting and one, I think some of the ones that we ask every year, right? We have these benchmarking questions. We ask the same thing year after year after year to look for nuances and differences because they're important questions. And so one of them was surrounding information sources. And we ask, what
mhm,
information sources do you routinely visit to find information to make a purchase decision? And that word routinely is important. So it doesn't mean, they don't do other things, but these are the things they do the most. And so what did we see there, Udo?
yeah. I think informational sources basically you need to be online. We see that digital usage is number one. I think they made 60% and more the buying circle online, so before even any kind of activity started. So that kind of showed pretty clearly this trend is there. We have been in print, we have been physically available, but digitally, especially also towards the European and Asian markets, is getting stronger and stronger. And I think that also means for many people out there listening that you need to get your website created in a perfect way. So it needs to be adaptable to all different providers, to all different devices. Mobile is a really key use here as well because nowadays everyone can just look up information online by using their mobile phone. So you have to make sure that your website also works on mobile devices. That's also a big step for many companies to make that happen. And that's where I see also a huge trend. So many companies are looking more and more towards the adaptability towards digital content. And if you can get grip on that, then I think that will change also the buying purchase of your company.
Yeah, yeah. Regardless of region, everyone wanted to go to vendor websites and technical
Yeah,
publication websites. So those sources, right? It's all digital, that digital journey, uh, and
it's
then do
all
some
digital. And
validation later of information they found.
yeah, and I think one point, good that you mentioned this point with yeah, also publications. I think it's also the independent review and the independent sources which make a difference. So of course you can put everything on your website, which you should definitely do, but then you need also kind of a backup from a knowledge provider or from a magazine or from an influencer who kind of backs up your story and showcase that your product is really as good as you mention it. That builds up trust. So if you can have those independent reviews, that will definitely help your product achieve what you would like to achieve.
So you mentioned earlier social media was one of the places where you saw some regional differences. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I think social media overall is not anything that is going away. We all have to work with it, and we get more and more channels to work with. We did incorporate, I think, you did incorporate in the questionnaire, of course, just a fixed set for comparison reasons. But even there, you see differences. Look, YouTube is number one globally, right? Everywhere. But when we look into European market more and more, we see that there's one platform which really wins it all. It's kind of it's called GitHub. So GitHub is more than 70%, so it's even over a usage. It's over YouTube even. So that basically means you have to have a profile or you have to have a reference on GitHub for your products or for your code. So GitHub is something that is a nice open source platform, so every engineer can look into it, can make some test cases, can get to know your product and your code and your data. So it is really number one in Europe, and it won't go away. So also there you need to make sure to be on this platform. And followed by GitHub is obviously in the business sector, LinkedIn. It's a really strong platform across the countries. But also here we see the difference, right? In America, we had, I think, more than 60% who actually go towards LinkedIn. In Europe, it's a bit below 50%. So also there are regional differences, but still there's no other competitor of LinkedIn in Europe that is known. So if you have a LinkedIn profile, perfect. You can even make a sub profile in a regional language, because that's also something that makes Europe a bit unique and difficult. There are many native languages that you, if you want to sell your product, you should translate it to, and then it makes a difference as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, on the lower end of all, I think yeah, the reasoning can be right, but I think we all know kind of why it happens. Facebook and Twitter, we did see a huge drop compared to the other years. And that especially also in Europe, we see less and less. I think it's a kind of trust issue as well, and less and less people use those platforms in order to make a buying decision. So that's something. LinkedIn, GitHub, that's really something you need to have. YouTube, for sure, you should promote your videos. You should make shorts from your videos. So you have both content forms available, like short content and long
Yeah.
form content. And yeah, then you're there.
And somewhere in the middle, but I think it's worth noting, is Reddit. And Reddit has moved up year over year quite a bit, I think by over 20
True.
percentage points. And no doubt a lot of that is because Google is surfacing Reddit answers. And so is Siri, or whoever. It seems like every
Yeah,
time I do a search, regardless of where I'm searching, Reddit seems to show up quite a bit. I know it's also being grabbed in
indeed.
ChatGPT and some of those summaries too. So
Yeah,
again, Reddit
I
as a
think,
channel that someone directly goes to is less popular, but
yeah.
it's worth paying attention to as well, I think.
It's definitely so. I mean, it has a kind of not the same approach than GitHub. I think Reddit is used for almost everything nowadays. GitHub is even more specific, but it has the same capabilities of joining groups, sharing information and data. So yeah, I think Reddit, let's see how it evolves, but especially in America, it does grow a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. It's more of an American thing than as you see it than the Europeans. Are they still distrustful of
Well,
it?
I don't think it's distrustful. I think there is, due to GitHub, there is already a good counterpart.
Ah, I see.
It is, of course, again, it's not the same,
Mhm.
but it goes more towards the same direction of
Yeah.
usage and use cases. But definitely something to look at. The development is big, yeah. And if we look even further, I think in the Asian markets, you also saw like WeChat,
Hmm.
is of course one of the big platforms over there. But I think that's more for another conversation
Yes,
if we want
yes.
to tap into Asia.
Fair enough. Okay, so moving on, how about content preferences? What types of content did our technical buyers say they preferred, and what were some regional differences you saw there?
Yeah, I think engineers really value a clear practical and technical content. So, like their data focus, they want to have the insights behind the product, the capability. So, yeah, I think in America you say something like they aren't browsing through the fluff. So, they really want the actionable information. And that's what they get in those papers, right? That's what they get in data sheets. I think that is still over 70%. And that really shows data sheets are the number one platform to go for and to create. And you should definitely have data sheets about all your products. And if you stick to that, I think then you're well prepared as well. And next to data sheets, I think comes also the trust level. So put reviews out there. You can use different platforms like magazines. You can use influencers to bring your message across to really get some independent trust from those platforms. And if you can achieve that, you can spread the word. You can really go out there and confidently say, hey, what you see on my website is also represented across different other players in the industry.
Yeah, and not only that, but having a presence not only on your own website, but on other trusted resources helps you with search engine optimization because you're demonstrating your expertise across all these different channels. So technical buyers see that. But selfishly, as a marketer, I also care that the bots and the algorithms notice that too, so that my company
Sure.
could be seen for certain technical applications in which we're experts in or have solutions for. It's another checkbox there.
It's another checkbox, and I think you should go out there and make this multi-channel approach. So yes, we talked about now data sheets. Data sheets can be in print, but most of the time they're digitally available. We talked about technical articles and publications, which is another big source and content preference. But there's also the whole video creation aspect, and it's a completely new field. But when you look into the way of, okay, what is scoring high at the moment, I think that's clearly the number one. Every social media platform is boosting video content a lot at the moment. And that also won't slow down as we see it. We see actually even a growth in this whole sector. So create how-to videos or make some in-depth product reviews that you can share with your audience. I think that is another nice content preference that that we see grow, and that definitely needs attention.
Absolutely agree. And you had already mentioned YouTube and its number one spot in social media, and that goes right along with video preferences. And I think it's something like 97% of engineers watch videos weekly for work. One of the things that I think a content marketer can do in thinking about video is think of that as your first piece of content, like your premier or primary piece, and then think of
Mhm.
all the things you can do off of that video with the transcripts. You can make shorts, you can make blog posts, so there's a lot of derivative content that can come off of a long form video. And we used to do
Yep.
that quite a bit with white papers, right? We had this long form piece of content that then we parceled out, and video could be thought of the same.
Yeah, and it's really serving multiple angles because even though engineers, we said globally, they think the same, but they're also really interested in all the data and all the inputs. And therefore, they search on every kind of level. So they're not just reading the magazine, they also watch the video. And indeed, like you just nicely explained it with the white paper example, I think you can do the same for like a whole learning campaign. You could teach people in a webinar how to use their software or how to use their product. And then out of this webinar, you can write a short book, for example, make some use cases that you can make online available and make it into a lead generation form. So I think that there are so many nice options nowadays that you could use as a marketeer with just one piece of content
One piece
and
of
divide it
content.
in so
Yes.
many, yeah,
Yeah.
and divide it in so many different platforms. And I think it's a nice and it's a fun time to work at nowadays. But it's also, of course, frustrating because you want to achieve results and then you see, I've worked really well with this one social media campaign. I do it exactly the same way again, and then it just falls off through the grid because some changes in the algorithm came. So that's why it is important to have kind of a backup, right? If social media doesn't work well, you still have your website, you have your white paper, you have your webinar, and so on. So you can always kind of have another solution if one of the channels doesn't work so well.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it is. And you're absolutely right. These algorithms keep changing. And now with generative search, the world has changed again. So yes,
Yeah.
multi-channel strategy.
But
So smart, smart way to spread your bets.
and you just said a generative search. I mean, AI is also playing a huge role, and we've seen that as well by using AI actively to create content items. So actually, it is a great tool to help you grow in a rapid speed. Once you have one content item and one content piece, nowadays you can look for some really well AI agents who can pull it together and actually make your work multi-channel available. So that's also something, yeah, we have seen. And I think there was another nice, yeah, difference, right? Talking about AI, Wendy.
Yeah, so we asked a couple of AI questions. One was around just are you using generative search when searching for products? And then the other question was do you trust the results from AI generative search? So where do you
Yeah.
want to start, Udo?
Where do we want to start? I think the trust level is something that really sticked out, right? So compared also to the last year, I would say, of course, this topic on its own is not that old. Of course, for engineers, it's been there since years. But I think generally talking, it is not out there for so many people. But when we
Yeah.
compare to last year, we see that the European actually trust level dropped as well. But if we now look into just a comparison between America and Europe, I think Americans were out of 10, a scale of 10, we were about, what was it, 4.2, which is already below middle. And in Europe, it was 3.7. So it was even lower, the trust level into AI. So what is the question that kind of sparks directly is why is it so? How can it be? Everyone is using it, but then on the other side, trust level goes down. I think that has also to do with many AI tools, software systems, language models. They all have been built up mainly in American countries or Asian countries, and Europeans feel, I think, a bit left behind. And they have yeah, generally speaking, a bit higher appreciation for data security,
Mhm.
and privacy regulations. So they are like really concerned when, oh, this data is saved not on any server in Europe, it's saved in America or China or Asia.
Yeah.
What does it mean for my company, right? What does it mean for my product as well? So I think that's why we see at the moment that the trust level is lower. But that is probably also just a picture for this time frame where we are living in right now. There are many companies and countries in Europe who also try to build up their own AI tools and language models. France is really investing heavily in growing in this sector. So
Hmm.
I think we also see then once that is implemented, probably again a nice switch in this trust score. So I'm really curious to see how that develops, Wendy, to be
Yes,
honest.
yes. And will an EU country that has a large language model be seen as more trustworthy because of the privacy laws and maybe if maybe that'll be an undercurrent of that model of you can really trust us and we're going to keep everything private and things are stored in the EU under
Yeah,
EU privacy laws. Hmm. Yeah,
e-
we're going to have to keep asking this one, aren't we?
yeah, exactly. And that's definitely helping. And yeah, also there's no problem in using AI also for your own development and product development, and actually you should do it. But what you should also make happen then is openly talk about it, right? Explain what comes from AI and how much it impacted your product and your company. And then that's kind of transparency that Europeans want. And if you show this transparency, again, that's definitely something where a lot of engineers are also looking forward to and say, okay, well, they use it, but they use it in this and that way. I understand it. Again, engineers, they don't look for inspiration. They just want a solution. And if AI is helping on the way, that's a solution that you can present,
And
right?
the
So that
solution,
definitely
yeah.
helps.
And to that end, I was surprised when we asked, when researching to make a purchase, do you use generative AI, search? And less than half said yes. And that really surprised me. And so a couple of things stood out to me is maybe because Google, not long before this survey was fielded, Google came out with the AI overviews, but it was so subtle
Mhm.
right at first. They didn't really make a big deal about it. It was the summary thing. So I don't know that an engineer is necessarily going to Google, getting those AI summaries and putting it together that's generative search. I think when people think of generative search, they think, oh, I'm going to ChatGPT or I'm going to Claude or
Yep,
Gemini and conducting a search. So in that case, less than
indeed.
50%. And that just really surprised me because I've adopted that quite a while ago. I don't know about you
Yeah.
in maybe your personal life or professional life. So I think it must tie back to that trust factor.
It definitely. I mean, we also in Elector we use it quite a lot now. We even have built up our own GPT just to help our readers go through all the magazines. It's just a simple LM, but in the end, it is helpful, and that's where we need where we see the opportunity. If you have a nice use case that helps the engineer to go to the next step, well, then why shouldn't you use AI? And why shouldn't you build something up that the engineer can use for his own goods? And yeah, that's definitely a nice trend. And I'm happy that we are also going towards those future steps and implement that already because again, it's a trust issue in Europe. But you don't overcome a trust issue if you don't actively work on it, and that's where I see also Elector in this position. Again, from what I said in the beginning, we are a provider to emerge those worlds, right? To kind of put both together from innovation and bringing practical applications. And yeah, that's why it's a super fascinating topic. And state of marketing for engineers really represents that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's, at least for the time being, it's good news for technical publications such as Elector because what it says to me is engineers still want to know the information sources and make sure that they're credible and they can trust that information. And so when something's just summarized for them and you don't know where it's coming from, you can't trust it. And then
Yeah.
they do go to vendor websites and they do go to technical publications and known influencers and analysts to get information. So, critical
Yeah.
jobs here, so they need
Yeah.
to know, yeah, the sources.
Indeed, indeed. And for companies on their own, it is the difficulty is really to make that happen as well, right? And that's where also Elector and also other technical publications step in. We know how to fill this gap in creating articles, content, video, webinar. So if the company is not capable of doing that on their own, where there are like a lot of platforms out there that can definitely help. So it is maybe even nowadays a bit more research involved than the standard, oh, I have done that the last 20, 30 years in my company marketing approach. You really have to go and have a look and which kind of platform fits towards my product, my company, so that I reach the right audience.
Yeah.
And once you have tapped into that, yeah, I think then your business will grow.
Well, I want to cover one more area for a couple of reasons. One, it's one of those tried and true areas that marketers look to find their target audience. And also, it's one where in the past we've seen a lot of regional differences, and that's trade shows. And you look
Yeah.
at, for many years throughout the 2000s, I'll say, and 2020s, US trade shows have gotten smaller on the whole, more niche focused, whereas the European shows tend to be bigger and have a lot of staying power. So, what did we see in regional differences of how technical buyers felt about trade shows?
Yeah, I think in general we see that I think more than 70% still plan to attend an in-person event. A bit contradictory from what you or what we say at the beginning that more and more people look online. But that is just comparing if people really go. And we saw also that there was a slight drop when it comes to more than one event. So I think people choose more, let's say, in-depth which event, which trade fair really fits a company. I think it has a lot to do with the budget spent. I mean, a booth on a trade fair is immensely expensive nowadays, and you really have to make sure that you go to the right trade fair in order to get back your investments. And I think that's what we see as well. So many still do it. They just want to attend where they want to collaborate with other companies. They want to showcase their new products. That's what it is for. And a trade fair can combine all that in one location. You
Yeah.
don't have to, let's say, make a business trip to Europe, to Germany, and then from Germany to France and from France to UK. No, you can just go to one trade fair which is based in Europe and you see them all. And of course, that makes it a lot of cost efficiency and that makes a lot of sense for many people to do that. And yeah, but in Europe still we see as well that less and less people go.
Oh,
We
really?
have I think 25% who said we don't go at all on a
Hmm.
trade fair. I think that is also due to the cost factor. But on the
Hmm.
other hand, 28% said they go to more than three events. So, there's actually also the movement that one trade fair is not enough anymore. We need to go to two, three to really get a good understanding. And I think when you look at trade fairs, last year I visited one of the really big electronics trade fairs in Munich, Electronica, and you could see they filled all the halls for Messe Munich, which has been, I think, over 80,000 trade fair visitors. It was the biggest ever for their numbers. And they did say they could have even added more halls if they needed to, but there was simply no more space. So
Yeah.
I think people really want to go. They want to show their companies. They want to show their products. And even though the respondents for the survey said a bit less than the years before we go, we still see that companies really want to go. And there's always just such a small representation on a trade fair from so many companies which are out there in the world. So of course we can't really get everyone who goes to the trade fair in
I
such a
get
report.
you. Wow, that's amazing to hear how they could have been even bigger than that. That's trade shows alive
Yeah,
and well in Europe. Yeah, goodness.
totally. Yeah,
Well, anything else we didn't cover today about the research that stood out to you, particularly these regional differences?
I think I think we covered it all, Wendy. I think those are the major differences. I think among that we can still say localization is super important in Europe. That is different than in the States, for example. There obviously you have one main language, besides maybe Spanish is also growing. But on the other hand, in Europe, you have a lot of languages that you need to cover. And again, cultures are also different. The behavior of the businesses are different. So that's something we didn't touch base at all. But
Yeah.
maybe that's something for another conversation we can face
I think that would
later.
be a wonderful episode onto itself. I am curious. I think this came up in the Q&A portion of our webinar, research webinar, is someone asked about localization tools and whether or not there's good AI out there and how much human intervention you need of the local person that's local to that language looking over things. So what is your advice on that?
Yeah, I think there are tools out there which are building up really quickly. The problem where there's still lack on is the engineering part of it. So if as soon you have a new product where you don't have many references, so even an AI can't really make the best out of it. And actually AI will give you false information at the end of the day. So you have to be really careful in using AI for, let's say, first launch products and so on. So you need to, if you want to localize something, you really still need to go to platforms where you see, like the native speaker are there. You have at least a copy editor who can reference and look at the content that is maybe produced by AI, but then at least it will be checked technically if that is all working fine and making sense. Um, yeah, so I think again, trade fairs are good showcase for that as well, because many people and office companies who have a booth there, they probably use also AI to create their taglines and create their localized product and company descriptions. So I have seen many interesting stories from companies in the German language, which clearly was AI,
Oh,
and it
whoa.
was making little sense in German. So it's you have to be careful, I would say.
Yeah,
So far, I would say AI is growing, and it will probably eventually go there that it can make a full in-depth translation of a new product in a perfect, really written and local language. But still, I think technical publications are, and translators especially, are go-to source at the moment. And you should always have someone with the language skill who can at least copy edit the article or the content piece that you produce, so
there.
that you
So
really
no,
make
no
sure it
huge
is to the
shortcuts.
point.
Oh,
Exactly. And as we know, engineers want data and they want in-depth reviews and insights, and they also spot really clearly and easily if there's any issue or any error. So that could also turn out to be not so good for your company if it's not well translated. Yeah.
that's right. And it's difficult to earn that trust back. So is it worth
Yeah,
cutting
we
that
know that.
corner? Yeah, I think that's really good
Yeah,
advice.
indeed, indeed.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, Udo, where can people go to connect with you and learn more about Elector?
Yeah, I think you can find me on LinkedIn. Just type in Udo Bormann Elector. You will find me most likely. And Elector.com is our e-commerce platform, and electormagazine.com is our English-speaking magazine platform, news platform. And as I mentioned, we just acquired EE News, so EE News Europe is our B2B platform. So have a look, check it out, and if you have any question, just reach out to me. No problem at all.
Perfect. Well, I'll include links to all of those in the show notes. And thank you for coming on to the show today,
Thank
Udo.
you.
Thanks for joining me today on Content Marketing Engineered. For show notes, including links to resources, visit truemarketing.com/podcast. While there, you can subscribe to our blog and our newsletter and order a copy of my book, Content Marketing Engineered. Also, I would love your reviews on this podcast. So please, when you get a chance, subscribe and leave me your review on your favorite podcast subscription platform. Thanks and have a great day.